we're gonna talk about the top 5 hardest zoanthids to keep. Let's go. Alright, Reefers, so as you guys saw, this episode is all about zoas. Not just any zoas, but the hardest zoanthids to keep. Now, before we jump right in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It lets us know that you like what you're seeing. Hector's behind the camera. Say what's up, bro.
Ohio.
As you guys know, Zoanthin is the name. We love zoanthids. So in our reef keeping, we have noticed that there are some zoanthids that are almost impossible to keep. Now, this is just based on my experience, so some people, I'm sure, have other opinions regarding this topic, but this is gonna be a fun episode. So Hector, what are some zoanthids that you think are super hard to keep?
Little Shop Zahoras, GMKs, Exospheres. What about you? What are some?
I mean, there's some that some people grow like weeds, and unfortunately, even I have a tough time growing. So we're gonna jump right into them. The tank's right behind me. Let's jump in.
Okay, guys. So one of the most expensive zoas that we have is the GMKs. But those are also the most finicky zoas that we have. We've had friends tell us that they've melted in their tanks after being fined for a few months, just out of nowhere. So one of the most finicky zoas that we have, like I said, is the GMKs. So take a look at the GMKs real quick and see how beautiful they are.
Time to put the eyes on. All right, guys, so here we have GMKs.
Aren't they beautiful?
And for the people that don't know what GMK stands for, those are Grandmaster Krakatoas. So these zoanthids, not only are they hard to keep, but they're super expensive. Believe it or not. Let's try to get a good glimpse of those. They're super hard to keep. Now, some people grow them like fire. Some people have even a hard time growing them. Now, what I have noticed with some zoanthids, they'll grow like wildfire, and out of nowhere they will melt. So I'm a big fan of starting your colonies with one single polyp, because if you can populate them from one single polyp, the odds are of them melting on you, it's less slim than if you buy a whole colony and then something happens. Hector, how much would you say Grandmaster Krakatoas go for per polyp?
They range anywhere from $350 to, I've seen some go up to $600.
I remember when Grandmaster Krakatoas first came into the market, I mean, they were probably like $800. I mean, it was something else pretty ridiculous. So these definitely would be the first on the list of super hard zoanthids to keep. If you guys just saw that clip, there's actually an Astarina starfish right next to the Grandmaster Krakatoas. So Astarinas, they do eat zoanthids. We could debate about this all day, guys. Feel free to do it in the comments. But in my tank, they eat zoanthids. So I always have these little stick because we're gonna knock that little sucker off. All right, guys. So it's super hard to see, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you could probably miss it. But that little thing right there, it loves zoas. So I'm gonna go in here and knock this sucker off. Come on. As you guys just saw, we had to take the Astarina out. So, the second zoanthid that is notorious for growing into a colony and then melting out of nowhere, and this has happened to me personally. I grew the zoa from one single head to a whole colony, and then out of nowhere they melted. It's the speckled cracks. And speckled cracks are right over here. So this specific zoanthid, right over here, I have grown it out multiple times from a single polyp into a whole colony. And out of nowhere, melts. It is a fast grower once it gets acclimated and gets happy. It likes low light, I have noticed. To get the big polyp extension and the polyps out like that, I would say medium flow and keep it medium to low light. That way it gets super fat. But that, for me, guys, would be the second zoanthid that's notorious for melting. What do you think? Leave a comment. Have you ever kept speckled cracks? All right, Hector. What would you say is the third zoanthid that is notorious for melting?
I'd say that the third zoanthid notorious for melting is right beside it, the next door neighbor, the Exospheres. Now, first off, they're slow growers. I mean, I've had this frag for about, what would you say, 3-4 months?
More than that, dude. You've had that for over 6 months.
6 months, and as you guys can tell, there's only 2 heads on there. If you guys have any luck with Exospheres and growing them, propagating them a lot faster, please leave a comment below. But they are notorious for melting. They're very finicky. A lot of times that they're closed up and they shrivel up and just melt away.
Now guys, the key to trying to avoid this as much as possible is make sure your parameters are in check. Zoanthids don't like super clean water. Also, dust your zoas. I dust my zoas every other day lightly to make sure there's no detritus, make sure no one's picking on them, and Astarinas. I'm not a fan of them. And I got them. So before anybody asks me, why don't I get a harlequin shrimp? I got a big marine beta in here. So that'd be a $45 dinner. Been there, done that, right? So I just keep an eye on it and I pull them out as needed. Now I know not all Astarinas eat zoanthids, but I just try to be safe and pull them all out as often as possible.
All right, guys, so the next ZOA that's really hard to keep is the little shops of horrors. They grow really slow, but as time goes on, they start to colonize pretty quickly. But they are notorious for melting. We've had a lot of our friends who've kept these ZOAs, and unfortunately, they would melt on them. There we go. But one of the things about keeping ZOAs, you want to make sure, is that you contain the aptasia that sometimes outbreaks in the tank. So you guys can see there's some aptasia here on the side of this frag. And Manny's putting some aptasia X in there.
Guys, the first thing I like to do before I spray is touch the polyp so I can close it. I do not want to risk getting any aptasia X on the polyp. So I want to make sure the polyps are closed. And there you see the aptasia. You can see the little tentacles. There we go. All right, and that one's gone. But aptasia is a known zoa killer. It'll sting them, they'll close up, and then it'll kill your zoanthids. And little shops of horror, guys, I've seen those things go for $100 a polyp to $300 plus a polyp. So you really want to be careful. And talking about aptasia, if you look to the right on the predators, there's actually one in the back. So I'm actually going to kill that while I'm here. And predators are also, you know, a super popular type of zoa. There we go.
But while using aptasia X, guys, you want to make sure that you use it sparingly, because that may mess up your water column.
The last zoanthid that, in my opinion, in our opinion, is one of the hardest zoanthids to keep. And I'm talking this zoa, I've talked to people that own stores, they own farms, wholesalers, and they all say the same thing. And those are the hallucinations. I don't have any, and the reason being is I've never found anybody who can keep them long term. Now hear me out. The hallucinations are probably neck and neck with the Grandmaster Krakatoas when it comes to how stunning and beautiful they look. And I've heard people go from a single polyp to a whole colony. I know a lot of people. And then they melt out of nowhere. Just like, you know, little shops of horror, sometimes they go really tight and it's hard to frag them. So for me, I'm a huge advocate of when your colony grows out, frag it so you have different specimens, you know, different options in case something happens. But hallucinations, definitely top 5 zoanthid that is known for going AWOL.
Okay guys, so it's time for the honorable mentions. First one, the white zombies. They're part of the people eater strand. We've had them multiple different times. They grow and then they also start to deteriorate and melt. The next one is going to be the spellbinders. Now those, we had a nice colony And as time went on, one by one, they would melt. It didn't matter the placement, and it didn't matter the system that we put them in. And we cannot end this video without doing a shout out. So this shout out goes to Emmanuel Woodley. Your intro video clips always get me pumped for the video. Thanks, Emmanuel. And again, thank you guys for the support. Definitely keep on commenting so we can shout you guys out in the next video.
All right, Reefers, so we hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode of ZOA Tank Boys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Till next time, ZOA Tank Boys out.